I'm going to guess you don't object to starting 3 minutes early? Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is James Kunke. I am the Community Relations Director for the City of Lewisville, and it is my pleasure this evening to serve as the moderator for this question and answer session with the 3 finalists to be the next Lewisville Police Chief. I want to first tell you how this activity is going to go, so there's no surprises. After I give these basic instructions and directions, the candidates each will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves. We then will go through a series of prepared questions. Each question will be answered by 2 candidates, just in the interest of time, and we'll rotate so they all get the same number of answers. After we have finished that portion, the prepared questions, we will give them each 2 minutes for a closing statement. Then we will go to the audience submitted questions, and we will run through those as far as time permits. We've received quite a few. Thank you all for your interest and your participation. We very much appreciate your being a part of this process. I want to offer a few additional thanks. As you see, we have ASL interpretation today. We also have live Spanish translation. There's a sign out by the sign-in desk where you can get that mobile app on your device for live translation into Spanish. We want to recognize Mosaic Public Partners who have been guiding us through this search process as we try to find the best possible person to replace retiring Chief Cheif Deaver, who still thinks he's leaving. And obviously we want to thank our members of City Council, our mayor and City Council. They all are present. They're not talking because they have a quorum, and I told them no. But we are glad they are all joined with us this evening. So with that, one last item for you. The cards you picked up at the door on which you can submit your audience questions, there are still blank cards available at the table by the door into this room. So you can, throughout the evening, get one of those cards, write your question on it, and then leave it on that table, and we will then process it for the second half of the activity. We will use as many audience questions as we can without using the same question 14 times. We just won't be able to get to all of them because I saw there was quite a few, but you can put yours in at the table there by the door. If you need the restrooms, it's all the way at the end of the hall on the left, and at the end of the hall on the right, there are still refreshments set out. If you find yourself needing a snack or needing something to drink, please do not hesitate to go take care of that as well. And with that, we are going to get into our program. We're going to start by having each of the 3 candidates give a brief introduction of themselves, and we will go alphabetically from right to left. So we will start with Christy.
Thank you, Jag. I appreciate you moderating this event tonight. Bill and Brooke, it's an honor to be on stage with you. To the audience, the community, Lewisville Police Department, thank you for taking a Wednesday out of your important schedule to be here. It speaks volumes about the investment you are making in this process. A little bit about my background, law enforcement-wise. I spent the first 12 years on the line level, ranging positions from detention officer, communications specialist, patrol officer, and then 5 years as a child and sex crimes detective. Following that, I was a line level supervisor for 3 years. I was a patrol sergeant, working both nights and day shift patrol. I finished my sergeant tenure as a property and financial crimes sergeant, as well as spearheading a couple of Secret Service task force and intellectual property crimes task force. And then I was tapped and triple promoted to the rank of assistant chief with the Grand Prairie Police Department. I had the distinct honor and privilege to lead all 3 respective bureaus at the time. All of those bureaus had sworn and civilian components. We did a lot of wonderful things. A couple of things I was proud of while I was an assistant chief with the Grand Prairie Police Department was a program that was near and dear to my heart called GPPD Fit Force. It was a program that was centered around wellness for our officers and civilians. We had the honor to present to IACP Wellness Symposium in January of 2019, and as a result of that presentation, many agencies mirrored our wellness program. Then in 2018, we had a historic crime reduction of 19% due to a predictive policing strategy that we implemented, and the men and women that I supervised and patrol helped get us to that finish line. We dropped to the 7th safest city in Texas, population of over 100,000, and that was history making. And to this day, the city of Grand Prairie is still one of the top safe cities in Texas. My leadership style is pretty simple. Colin Powell said it pretty well, that you need to leave the top floor and all of its grand accoutrements and go into the bow levels for real. So it's the simple things that really matter. It is incumbent upon a leader to get down onto the line level to figure out what's going on, because it's the simple things that can turn into the greatest of benefits. But if those simple things are not checked, they can also become detriments. So as your chief, if selected, I promise to be out there with the men and women and the community to make sure we are meeting the needs, both internally and externally, with all of our stakeholders. Personally, I am married. My husband and I, Joe, have been married for 19 years as of next month. We are the proud parents of a son and daughter. In my free time, which is very little, it is spent being a mommy. I do scoreboard keeping for my son's basketball games and cheerlead watching my daughter doing gymnastics. Thank you for having us here tonight. It is an honor and privilege to be on the stage.
Thank you, Christy, and now we'll hear from Brooke.
Well, thank you very much. I echo Christy's comments. It is very nice to see all of you out here tonight. This is amazing. This is one of the reasons that I have decided to come and apply to this city. The turnout is awesome. So thanks for taking time out of your evening to be with us. So I'm Brooke Rollins. I am a deputy police chief with the Arlington Police Department. I've been there for almost 22 years in January. And a little bit about myself personally. I'm happily married. My wife, Christy, of 21 years, is joining us in the room tonight. And together we have 3 boys that round out our family. On the side, we own an ice cream business where we live, and that's what keeps us busy most of the time beyond our work. So I graduated from Texas A&M University. I had a Bachelor of Science degree from there, and later obtained a Master of Criminal Justice from the University of Texas at Arlington. And I've been with the Arlington Police Department since the beginning of my career. While at Arlington, I have been able to build a very diverse and experienced understanding of law enforcement from every angle of policing. I've been able to do that because I've been fortunate enough to serve in each one of the bureaus that our police department actually has. I've also been fortunate to do it at all of the ranks that our police department has, from officer up to the level of deputy chief. And I think that that helps provide the experience and expertise that the city of Lewisville will need for its next police chief. And so with that, as half of my career and a little greater than that has actually been in the role of a leader in our organization. And I've been very fortunate to go to all kinds of great leadership skills to build the baseline of my leadership experience and understanding of that role. And places like the Police Executive Research Forum and the FBI, and they've been absolutely instrumental. But for me, the most important part about being a leader in a police department is personal to me. I focus my leadership style on people and on relationships. To me, I want to be a leader and aim to be the leader that is approachable, that is personable, that is caring, and available to anybody that I get an opportunity to work with. And so I focus on that as some of the things that I'm dedicated to. And so there are 3 particular attributes that I personally fixate a lot of my attention on, and I want to share those with you tonight. Building trust, valuing and forming relationships with any person that I get an opportunity to work with. And then, most importantly, valuing the people of the Lewisville Police Department and the community itself as the most important asset that drives us to success. Any leader knows that we are successful because of what people do, not necessarily because of the leader. And that is the type of relationship that I bring as a part of my leadership style. But why Lewisville? Why here to be your police chief? Well, I've always had the aspiration of being a police chief. This is something that I've known in my personal career that I've wanted to do. But I've wanted to do it in a community that shares my values and has the same community ideals. And when the city of Lewisville posted this position, I leapt at the opportunity because of what I know about the community and what I know about where this community is heading in the next 10 or 15 years. This is a community that I intend to be a part of. And the department, from the people that I know, the people that work here, the people that live in this community, this is a place that takes it seriously and wants to get it right. And you can find that in all the faces that are sitting out here right now that have taken time out of Wednesday to learn about who the next police chief is. And so that is why I'm excited at this opportunity to work at the Lewisville Police Department as a police chief. My vision for the city includes us being the safest in the entire state of Texas, one of the most innovative in the entire state of Texas, and doing it with the happiest workforce that we have, with a very supportive community. So I too thank you for being here. I am appreciative of the opportunity to sit and talk with you tonight in this conversation, and I look forward to getting to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. And now we will hear from Bill.
Well, I'm grateful to be here tonight. I feel honored to sit next to Christy and Brooke. They're great candidates and good people, so it feels very honorable to sit here. I have the advantage. I've been in Lewisville for my whole career. I've been here 25 and a half years plus some, and I love this city. And I know this city up and down, backwards and forwards. I know how it works. I know the citizens, and I love this city. And when I really thought long and hard about putting in for this position, it was enlightening to dig deep and think of how much this city has given to me in these 25 years. And so I feel honored to be in this position to sit up here and have a chance of being your police chief. I've been here 25 and a half years. I've done a lot. I've worked with most of these officers here, every officer here, I think. As a foot officer, I've spent most of my career working the front lines. I spent my first 5 years in patrol. I spent some of that time as a field training officer. I went into criminal investigations. I worked robberies, homicides, and assaults, and did that for 10 years. I learned a ton, and that really taught me how to be an officer. I learned the nuts and bolts of what it was, how to handle stuff that has a lot of media interest, things that are kind of hard to tackle, how to sit on a stand for 3 days and get abused by defense attorneys. And those things you learn character, you learn tenacity, you learn some great things. I promoted out, went back to patrol for a couple of years, had a lot of different assignments in patrol. And as a sergeant, I moved out to training. I ran the training division for a while. I ran city special events for several years, all the big things that we do, writing all those security plans. I supervised K-9 unit, and during all that time, I spent 18 years on the SWAT team, and 5 of those years as SWAT commander officially, a couple of years as acting SWAT commander. If I learned leadership, that's where I learned it. And how to deal with strong personalities. I have one, but those are the strongest of the ones to deal with. And I learned to love my SWAT team members and really appreciate what they do, but how to act in critical incidents and not only the legal sides, but the emotional sides, and being able to calmly lead people in dangerous situations. So I learned a lot in those. I eventually promoted up to captain, and I went over criminal investigations for a while. I was in patrol for a couple of years, and I went back over criminal investigations and narcotics and street crimes unit, and had a great experience there. Now I'm the assistant chief over the support bureau, which is basically all the officers not in patrol and those staff. So I deal with that half. Every day is a learning day, and that's what I've learned. I've learned the power of humility as a leader. I love leadership. I study it. I teach it. I try to live it. I'm not perfect at it, but I try really hard, and I constantly study the act of doing it. I'm a servant leader by nature. That's what I like to do. I like to serve and I like to work, and I think that is my strong suit, but I also believe in accountability, and I believe those things are important. One of the very greatest characteristics I think you can bring as a leader is have good character, high moral standards, and I live far above what the city requires or the police department requires, because that's what I think is most important, and try to lead by example. They said it very well. I'm grateful you're here today. I see so many familiar faces, and I'm very grateful for the support and your opinions, whether that's towards me or them. It's just great that you guys are all here and participating, because that's where the real power is. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and all candidates for that introduction. We now will go through a list of prepared questions prepared for me to read, not prepared for them. They have not seen them. Each question I will present to two of the candidates in the interest of time. We've spoken ahead of time. If there's one they really feel strongly about, we can work them in. And we will start with the first question will be for Christy and then Brooke. As you know, a police department's greatest resource is its workforce. The leadership style of the police chief is critically important to the agency's success. Discuss how you plan to inspire the men and women of the police department and how your leadership style will assist with this effort. First, Christy.
Great question. So it's imperative that the leader is in the mix with the men and women. As I mentioned earlier in the statement, that it's important to know what's going on because it's the simple things that can lead to great turnouts. And sometimes it's those simple things, if they're neglected, can have some devastating effects. But Stephen Covey said it best, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And so as a leader, it's incumbent upon me to saturate myself with the men and women my first several weeks, learning the intricacies of the police department, meeting members of the community, the district attorney's office, the advocacy center, and so on, so that I can have a better understanding and footing of what is happening in the Lewisville Police Department operation-wise. It's also incumbent upon the leader to gain information in terms of our arsenal and bank of technology assets, knowing where we have wins and where our weaknesses are. So it's incumbent upon the leader to really address a lot of things up front in terms of meeting the people where they're at and then taking it from there. I certainly am not going to be the person to walk in day one and make egregious changes because this police department doesn't need that. I have met with quite a few of you tonight. I've done some homework ahead of time, speaking with people inside the department. More importantly, outside opinions to me matter even more. And their viewpoint is this city's healthy. It's doing the right thing. People are communicating with one another, not only internally, but our community is involved externally. I had the privilege of watching a couple of city council meetings, and it's been some hot topics with short-term rentals. And it's very evident that the communication with our residents to city council and mayor, as well as to code compliance and the police department, is the input matters and the city is listening. And that is certainly something as a leader I would do with the police department, is listen, then lead.
Thank you, Christy. And now Brooke.
Thank you for the question. Inspiration for the workforce is probably one of the most central topics that I am fixated on. I talked earlier in my introduction about the importance of relationships and people, and that's where I like to start from. And so the way that you inspire a workforce, the way I plan to inspire this workforce and to continue the greatness that even Christy referred to just now, is by being physically present with you from the minute we get started. There is a big difference to leading from over there versus leading right where you are, and being able to understand what impacts your work group and what is important to you. And so you'll find me deliberately present, you'll find me available, and you'll find me being a student of everything that this department has done to get it where it is right now. As I talked about our forward progress, it is important that we bring everybody with us. Retention is a critically important issue for me. The employees that work here need to feel happy about coming to work, and that starts with me as your police chief. I have to be able to demonstrate that this is a great workplace for you to be and to feel comfortable about coming to work every day to do your job. I don't ever want there to be any way that I am upsetting that particular process. And so I do that through my own communication style, my interpersonal skills to be able to relate to any person as best as possible. It's one of the things I'm proudest of, is those relationships that we can form. You're only as strong as the relationships you have, and so that begins on day one. The neat part is it doesn't end on day 5 when you had a chance to meet everybody, let's just say. This is an ongoing process. The chief is always physically present with you in every place and every space of this organization. And my leadership style, to the other end of the question, is one that is very simple. It is derived from the ability to be dedicated to building trust in this organization and your leader. I myself have lived through a recent chief change, and I understand the concern about bringing in a new person or an internal candidate to become the new chief. What changes will be in place? What is going to happen with this new person? Well, the whole function of what I want to do is to build that happiness and make you comfortable for being at work, and I intend to focus on that. The staff and the leaders within the police department will feel the exact same message from me. And then we communicate openly, honestly, and all the time. You deserve to hear from me each and every time we want to talk about change. I have no intention to come in and change anything either. I agree that this department is functioning well. But as a good student, I will have questions. I want to know how we got where we are and where it is we think we're heading next so that we can work collaboratively together to make this department greater than it already is. So that's a brief run of my own leadership style and how I would intend to inspire this workforce.
Our next question will be for Bill, then Christy. How do you plan to foster a positive and inclusive work environment within the police department? First, Bill.
Well, that's a great question. I think first is being positive. I think as a good leader, any good leader leads by influence, and influence is similar to some of the things they've answered on their leadership style, is built through trust. And trust is made up of good character, competence, and communication. And so I think all those three things really matter when you're trying to build trust. And when people trust you, they feel safe. And even if you're disciplining or there's something that goes wrong, if they understand the process and they trust that you're not out to get somebody, they're in a safe place, that fosters that positive environment when you're trying to build something bigger than you. And I think as a leader, you have to have good vision, and you have to show that we need to have something, fighting for something bigger than us. Our profession is far bigger than us. It's far bigger than the city of Lewisville or the state of Texas or even the United States. This profession is worldwide, and what we do impacts that. And so we're fighting for a greater cause. All our sworn officers raised their hand and made a promise to uphold the law and to hold a higher standard and to live an unsullied life, both in their professional and their personal lives. And I think if we're fighting for that greater cause, and we're positive about that, and everybody's fighting for that, we'll get through some of the bumpy stuff, and we can feel safe where we are, and we can be in a better place. And I think that builds that positive environment. It goes back, Brooke said it well about recruiting and building a place where people are happy. That we have to have that. We've got to learn to respect each other, and we've got to constantly remind of how much we appreciate what we're doing. What frontline officers do and their supervisors, this is a hard profession. There's nothing easy about it. And everybody has chosen to do it. And the support staff that may not be sworn bear that burden. If you're a dispatcher, if you're a jailer, whatever your role is, you play a huge role and you carry a burden, and that's by choice. And so to point out and recognize and appreciate people for what they're doing and build an environment so they can be successful through technology, through programs, making their life better, even a new facility that we're building, even those physical things help build a positive environment. So as a chief, those are the things that I strive for. Better vision, better communication, leading with character, leading by example, and being positive. This is a great city to work for. It is. It's not broken. It's incredible. We have more support here by city staff, by council members, by a mayor, by the citizens than most cities don't have that luxury. What an incredible place to work. And sometimes we get lost in the weeds when we're in our own little bubble, and we forget about how good it is and how important our profession is. It's a very honorable profession, and reminding each other that it's honorable and holding each other up is how we stay positive through some of the tough stuff, because we deal with a lot of tough stuff.
And now, Christy.
Bill, well said, truly. Fostering a work relationship starts from the moment someone is hired, all the way through their noble career and past when they are retired. It's important that we're investing in our men and women from the moment they're hired, that we are picking candidates who know what they are doing. This profession demands the absolute best, And our standards for Lewisville Police Department is no different, and that would be hiring quality candidates from day one. I have the privilege of mentoring a lot of new recruits throughout the Metroplex. They come to the Regional Police Academy where I'm director. And during that course of the conversations, I teach professionalism and ethics. And about midpoint, I stop everyone and I ask them, why? Why are you getting in this profession? And we talk about some stories, and I share my story because I want them to know what the impact this profession has had on me, how important it's been. And then what we discover is through these stories, when all the men and women from different ages, brackets, economic backgrounds, and different stories, is that we're no different. Everybody has a story, and it's similar to our relationship building. It's important to know the men and women, where they came from, why they are doing what they're doing, and to tap into that. And as your chief, I'd make sure that I'd be one of your biggest advocates in terms of, are you getting the resources, the training, and the skills that you need? And a lot of times you are. We just need to explain our why a lot better. I believe fostering that relationship begins as you transition from the academy to our workforce. It's imperative that we have an in-service that is not just 2 to 3 weeks, but that we're really indoctrinating you in the Lewisville way, that you can see that you are valued from day one. I just believe that this starts from the moment of your hire date, and it is certainly something that we would mold and mentor throughout your career here in the Lewisville Police Department.
Our next question will be for Brooke and then Bill. Discuss your approach to working with various stakeholders, community, city leadership, internal police department staff, and others.
Thank you for the question. That's a very important job for the police chief, is being able to work with a multitude of different stakeholders. So the way I look at this is almost an application of our community-based policing model. You know, our stakeholders all have an interest, and I bring this usually down to just a simple term of customer service. Any stakeholder that has an interest in the police department, whether it is an elected official, a citizen, one of the employees, a faith-based organization, they have an interest in something from that police department, and it's our job to serve that customer with the needs that they have. So collaboration with our community is just as important as the people that work in this police department. And that starts with the direction from me of the expectation of the entire organization that we are an accessible and collaborative workforce that values the partnership between any of our stakeholders. And so the way that I intend to do that is by, upon arrival as the police chief, relying upon the information from my organization, from this department, to point us in the direction of our key stakeholders and building that network from there. And that needs to be an ongoing and very, very excited opportunity to form those relationships and build those partnerships. And I know I mentioned earlier about the importance of relationships, and we are only as strong as the relationships we have, and we go into a crisis with those relationships. And during a crisis is not the time to start meeting people. And so I believe wholly in forming any stakeholder relationship that has value and understanding in the police department itself. And so in my current community, or in my current police department, all of the different sections that I work in are tasked monthly, myself included, with forming new relationships within the community and reporting back on the status of those relationships. And while it may sound mechanical, it ends up being quite an interesting exercise in meeting neighbors and meeting other people that we weren't originally there to be with. And that, to me, is the root of good customer service, which is what establishes those stakeholder relationships from day one. And that's what I intend to do here as your police chief.
And now Bill.
I think that's the definition of a police chief, is balancing those things, those three things, right? We're balancing community and the public, we're balancing the police department and its employees, and we're balancing the city staff and the city dignitaries, and we're trying to balance all that. The great thing is public safety is all three of those responsibilities. Everybody has to share in that. Any police department that's going to be functional has to have buy-in from the community, has to have buy-in from the city administration, has to have buy-in by the police officers. to be effective, that's how it needs to be. You can be the greatest police department in the world, but like Brooke said, it's built on relationships, and you have to build those. And to be the most effective, all three of those have to be in play. So how do you do that? Well, the city's, one of their core values is build, serve, and value, which is critical, right? We have to build our future by building those relationships. We have to value each other and each role that is played, and ultimately we have to work at it. We have to serve. We have to get down dirty and just get working. That's really what it is. We have to have those hard conversations. We have to help communicate where there's that rub, and there always is. Sometimes the community doesn't understand why police do things the way they do. Sometimes police officers start to forget how they should do it properly because community plays an important role. And so you remind them that when the community calls, we're there to serve, even if it's an annoying call that we get a lot and we feel kind of used and abused. But that's ultimately, if that's your mom or your sister or your brother, you probably ought to treat them that way, right? And the city administration's the same balancing act. You're dealing with finances, you're dealing with political uprisings, you've got a lot of different things that come into play. And you have to be able to balance that. The police department's core values, service, integrity, and professionalism. That's what we have to strive for. And those are the things that if we're doing that in a department and we're getting them to work, and then we're matching the city values, which build, value, and serve, we're already talking pretty good. And now we get the community involved with every bit of that. And we do that through town hall meetings. We do that with meeting with different groups and growing communities that are constantly changing. Lewisville is constantly growing. We've got a lot of different cultures that we didn't have 10 years ago and 15 years ago. And so I agree with Brooke. It's about relationships and communication and getting all three of those players understanding that we need to work together for public safety. That helps us all feel better. It helps law enforcement feel better. It helps the community feel better. And if those things are working, city administration is completely on board if we can keep those two working very well.
Our next question will be for Christy and then Brooke. It is no secret that policing in America is experiencing one of the more challenging times in the past few decades. What will you do to ensure Lewisville's residents and business owners continue to support their police department? We'll start with Christy.
200 years ago, when London was experiencing unrest economically, disruptions with their communities, Sir Robert Peel discussed the 9 pillars of policing. He also said that the police are the public and the public are the police. The community and the police department, they work hand in hand. It's no secret that when communities thrive, you usually have a thriving police department, and vice versa. A thriving police department equals a thriving community. It's very imperative that we, as Bill and Brooke mentioned, build these relationships, encourage these relationships. As an assistant chief of the Grand Prairie Police Department, we were fortunate to have quarterly meetings with all of our community leaders, clergy, pastors, and during those discussions, we were able to talk about difficult subjects and start bridging the gap. When unrest happened, because we had formed those relationships well ahead of time, we would sometimes get the call before we would start calling our faith-based leaders and community leaders. And they say, you know what, Grand Prairie, we've seen you time and time again. We know how your police officers are, how they act. And just because something in Minneapolis happened or in Nevada, it doesn't mean that is indicative of the Grand Prairie Police Department. And I would venture to say that's the same type of response that many would say for the Lewisville Police Department. So I would really encourage that we start this effort with our community by including our faith-based organizations to be involved, because they are usually the heartbeat of the community with what's going on, and it'd be imperative to be ahead of the game by reaching out to them and making sure that our community is aware of what's going on and that we're an advocate for them.
And now Brooke.
Well, thank you for the question. And I agree with Christy's position about our relationship with the community. For me, the first place we start with maintaining a positive relationship with our residents, our business owners, and all of the key stakeholders in our town begins with our recruiting, our hiring, and our training, identifying and finding the right people to be at the Lewisville Police Department, people that are representative of this community, people that are representative of the ideals that we want from our police department, and making sure that those people are trained effectively. Policy and practice that closely matches those to show that this is the function and the idea of our police department as we work with our community, whatever that particular work may be. And being able to demonstrate that before the officers even sit down for day one in their class at the academy instills that particular mantra that we practice here in the city of Lewisville. Because I know from the experience that I've had that this town takes great pride in its relationship with its community. And there's no intent to try to disrupt that. The only way we can keep that safe is by finding the right people to work here and training them effectively. And then being able to manage the staff that we have and keeping them happy internally. Treating our staff, treating our employees like they have with the dignity and respect that they deserve will easily breed the outside same behavior with the rest of our community. If our staff is appreciated at work, they in turn will be able to model the same behavior to that stakeholder that has interest in what we're doing. And so, as those community partners are a large part of what we do and how we intend to operate, one of the things that I intend to do is to communicate with each one of our stakeholders in the interest that serves you the best. I've had the opportunity to meet several of you tonight, and if selected to be the chief, I look forward to continuing those relationships. But it starts here. It starts with that relationship and understanding that that communication is consistent, ongoing, and transparent with you. And then building in feedback loops. I think it's important that as we are interacting with any of these stakeholder groups, we have an opportunity to listen to what it is you're trying to say and to understand what you're trying to say. As we make decisions about police, as we make decisions about how we intend to operate in this community, you deserve a seat at that table. And I'm talking to all of you, the department and the community deserve a seat at that table to collaborate together as stakeholders, because at the end of the day, we're all stakeholders in this particular game, and I think that we all have an interest in understanding what the outcome will be. And so that's how I intend to support our business and residential stakeholders here at the Lewisville Police Department.
Our next question will be for Bill and then Christy. How do you plan to stay connected with the community and understand its evolving needs?
Well, I mentioned earlier how this environment and this profession, and I'm sure this is true in citywide as well, but this profession, it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving, right? And it takes one episode to happen on the news, and all of a sudden that's the new biggest and most important thing, and we've experienced that pretty apparently the last few years of high-profile police matters that now turn into the main topic. So I think some of that question's already been answered a few times when we talked about relationships, and we have to build them, like Brooke said, well before the critical incident happens. Those relationships have to be built. So I think that's where you stay with it. I mean, you've got to have a community input. They've got to be constantly part of it. It should not be abnormal to be talking in churches and having that church community. It should not be abnormal to have community leaders that are the stakeholders of the city meet often with the police chief and meet with city administration to discuss and to deal with those hot topic and those hot issues. As a police chief, I think those things are critical to build those relationships, to build a pastor group that of all these different lead churches that you can get together, because they have a real touch on what the community is and who their people are, and they have an influence that's very different than what a police chief would have. So having a relationship with them, but there's so many civic groups out there that you stay connected with. Having a Citizens Police Academy that we run very strongly, and they're a very active part of what we do. They're a connection with us. Our training department, we have a citizens board that mandated by TCOL, but it's a board that's completely involved with what we're training, how we're training, and what we're doing. All those are different avenues to have connections with that. But it's also keeping connections with your city council members who have their communities. You're meeting with them regularly. Your city administration who's connected with that. Your mayor who has a more broad version of all of that. You have to build those relationships and stay connected with them because they're the public. They're the ones that are represented and voted in by the public. So clearly they have a connection that's a little different and more unique than a police chief or a fire chief in that role. So I think all those avenues you've got to be reaching out to and connecting with constantly. That needs to be the norm. And then when the news media hits something and it's really tough on our profession, you can lean on them and reach out to them. Brooke said it well too, and Christy as well, talked about when those times happen, that's when you lean on those relationships. And they trust that you're already doing good things. And they see these terrible things that police officers are on TV. And that was the greatest time to be a Lewisville police officer, by the way. It was tough here in Lewisville. But I felt more support here than I felt people pushing back. Because they're like, that's not the Lewisville police officer I know. That's not what I know our police department to be like. And I see all these terrible things on TV, or I see this, and we don't see that at all here. That's because those relationships have been built and fostered by people long before I got here. And to continue building that and continue that growing and continue those relationships keeps that buy-in. Because again, we are all in this together. Ultimately, the police department spearheads public safety. But we're all in this together. We all want better communities. We all want better neighborhoods. We all want less crime. We all want to feel safer on the streets. We want to make sure the officers are doing the right things the right way. We want to make sure that's happening. And we don't want some narrative coming out of some place far away from here or just down the street from us to dictate what our profession is.
And now, Christy.
Well, you've been hearing it over and over again, the importance of building these relationships well in advance of any catastrophe or crisis hitting. And Lewisville has been doing that, and they continue to do that. Back in 2020, the mayor at the time did a Learn and Lead workshop with all the various divisions and departments with the city of Lewisville, and I had the pleasure of watching one by then Sergeant Noble, now Captain Noble, and Cheif Deaver was also a part of that 3+ hour workshop that they conducted. Very transparent. They had a bank set of issues and questions that were presented to the police department, and they took over 3.5 hours to answer those questions, provide a presentation. And that's something that should continue to be sustained, not because of a crisis or a board meeting. It's something that we should be doing every day. And I have seen ever since that this is just a habit for the Lewisville Police Department. The needs are going to continue to evolve. It's matter of fact that tomorrow can change how we do policing. It is that rapid. But when I was listening to one of the Listen and Leads, Lewisville was already implementing mandatory programs a year in advance of it being a T-Cole requirement. So I just would like the community to rest assured that the staff has been on point, and whoever is a chief of police can continue with that momentum and making sure that those relationships are solid, that everybody has a voice at the table, and there's certainly still relationships that need to be formed, and we will do that going forward.
Our next question will be for Brooke and then Bill. Tell us about your past involvement in community organizations or volunteering, and what strategies do you find successful to get officers and staff engaged with the community?
Yeah, so I've got an extensive history in volunteering in my personal and in my professional life. I'm an active volunteer with my church. and have been for quite some time. Working with the youth and other initiatives that we have keeps me busy there. Within the police department, there are ample opportunities for us to volunteer. One program that I'm most proud about in my past, in my current position with the Arlington Police Department when I was the training commander, there was a exercise in Arlington that is called Clean Up Arlington, and it's fairly straightforward. But I was able to recruit all of our academy class at the time to go out on their weekend, give up their time, and help with cleaning up brush, cleaning up this particular area of the neighborhood, and starting them down the path of volunteering right then and there. And that program still occurs today. Now, that program was, the inception of several people, but being able to come to the police department's training center and start with our recruits to bring them into the field from that position, I think, is an invaluable way to help the police department learn and understand the importance of volunteering. And so that is a major portion of this police department itself, because we rely on volunteers for this department to be functional. At last check, I think we have more than 30 volunteers that donate their time to this organization. What an amazing testament that people from the community are willing to step in and donate their time to this organization's success. We should be just as keen to do the exact same thing. And so, as the police chief, the volunteering and the ability to connect with the community on that level from the police department is something that I'm very interested in and look forward to doing here.
And now, Bill.
I too, much like Brooke, have grown up in a service-oriented family, church, and have spent many hours and many times serving voluntarily, and that has turned into the love of my life. I find the greatest character building is serving. When you start forgetting a little bit about yourself and start worrying about everybody else, life looks a little bit better and your problems look a little bit smaller. And I think that happens serving in youth groups and dragging them up mountains on camps and teaching them about real things of life. I think those are the most critical things. And when we're giving of ourselves, that's what servant leadership is. It's giving up our time and helping somebody else. Sacrifice. When we're willing to sacrifice our time and our energies and our efforts, really shows how we value people. And so what are we willing to do? Are we willing to be there? When it comes to a police department, that's critical. Service, one of our core values. We serve every day. We serve constantly. How do we reach out to the community and do that more? We spend a lot of time in this community. We keep hearing it over and over from all three of us. This is an incredible community. It's not by accident. It took a lot of effort, and there are a lot of people long before I got here. I've been part of it for 25 years. My goal is to continue growing on that. Faith in Blue, we spend time with churches, and when we serve side by side, and we walk through schools on career days, and we hand out stuff to kids, and we talk about what we do. That's that community service. That's what we do. Our neighborhood resource officers are the definition of that. They're the face of Lewisville Police Department, and they're the hardest working crew we have. In that realm, they constantly are giving service, but it goes all the way to the patrol officer who gives their time on days off and the time they sacrifice, or the people every level. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be a police officer. You can be a dispatcher. You watch the service that happens in our city. This is a this is a great department that we're part of, carrying on traditions that happen, whether it's Clean Up Lewisville with having bunches of police officers and from the police department there, community-wide, or our whole department, our whole city-wide. Those are how we build those relationships. Those are the community things that we keep in contact by serving together. That's where that community is. When we're stocking the shelves in the storehouse, we aren't talking about crazy police stuff anymore. We're just talking about life. We're talking about real. And that stuff is great. And that's where those relationships are built, and that's where that community trust is built. And we're not worried about us. We're not even worried about what was on the news last night. We're just serving together, and we're for a cause greater than our own. And as we remember that cause, and as we constantly strive for that cause, our problems will shrink, and our community relationships will grow.
And I see that Christy is asked to be able to answer this question also.
Yes, if I could, I'd like to speak to the men and women of the police department specifically about this question. When I was a line level, first line supervisor, to be asked to volunteer to do something else in addition to the mandatory overtime and the call outs just seemed like something else. That's why it's important for a leader who goes above and beyond, who steps up and is doing these acts, volunteering at churches, volunteering at Cops and Kids Fishing, volunteering at the boxing gym, and those kind of things, you then begin to realize and over time begin to mirror what that leader does. So it's important for them to see, man, I'm working 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. I'm committed to the men and women of this police department, and I'm also committed to these outside community events, 501c3s, because they're important. When we invest in these outside entities, they eventually pour into us, or they're pouring into the young person that is, having some struggles. So it's important for the leader to shine by doing these things where it becomes a lot more applicable to the men and women on the line level to jump on board and volunteer.
Okay. Our next question will be for Christy and then Brooke. What have you found to be the most effective way for the police department's personnel to connect with the community they serve to enhance trust and legitimacy?
Well, this is an onion type of question because you can peel this onion over and over again. There is so many opportunities for us to connect with our community. When I think about elementary, primary, secondary school, there's opportunities, as Bill mentioned, doing the reading with our kids. One of the biggest struggles right now is literacy, and our kiddos not being able to read, write, the English language, secondary language. And so being able to be a factor in that by showing up and reading with the child is invaluable. Going to do Cops and Kids, for a child to have the opportunity to fish for the first time and they're catching a fish with an officer speaks volumes. They'll always remember those moments. We also started a boxing gym, and that was specifically tailored for our elementary, middle school, and high school students to be able to go where police officers would mold and mentor them, provide them with an opportunity to have some physical exercise, learn some skills to defend themselves, with the requirement that they pass their schoolwork. Another opportunity for us is we did rodeo for our Special Olympics. I wasn't quite the rodeo gal, but learned that many in our city, as well as outside entities, were all eager to get involved and start a rodeo. And the money and assets that came about from that program were poured into Special Olympics and to the children that were not afforded the opportunities based on their disabilities. Another program is Unidos, which means united in Spanish. If I believe correctly, the city of Lewisville has a 32% population Hispanic, with 34% of the population speaking a language other than English. This would be a great opportunity for us to connect with the community by providing a service to share programs about the police department with our Spanish-speaking community, specifically with immigration laws right now. There's a hot topic with Senate Bill 4 that's coming out in February of 2024. This is a program to help educate them about that bill, about driver's license, how to file a police report, and other things. So there's plenty of things that we can do to invest in our community, and those are just a few that I can think of right now.
And Brooke.
Well, thank you for the question. Building trust and legitimacy in an organization is one of the most critical things that we end up doing with our community. We rely on the legitimacy that they elect to give us, not that we demand from them. And the only way that we're able to receive that from them is through the behavior that we bring as a police department. In 2014, they drafted a report on the 21st century of policing. And the very first pillar that is mentioned in that report is the importance of building trust and legitimacy. In fact, I served on the 21st Century Committee for the City of Arlington as one of the exemplary agencies across the country with the Department of Justice Cops Office. And what I learned from that takeaway was, if a police department's unable to manage all 6 of these pillars that are written in this report, then that's great. But if they can't, if they can focus solely on building trust and legitimacy in an organization, they are light years ahead of where we've been in the past. And so the way that we go about building that trust and enhancing legitimacy with our organization is we recruit, we hire, and we train the right people. We need people, of course, to be apt and able to do the job, but we need people that are going to embody the ideals that our police department has from what we're expecting them to do with the community. And then we are physically present in our community, from top to bottom and side to side. Whether you are a sworn member or not, supervisor or not, my expectation for me first and for you behind me is we are present in the community every day, building relationships, talking with people, and making ourselves available to this community. The community will allow us to police, not the other way around. They will allow us to, we have to earn the right to police from them on a daily basis. And so our responsibility with the actions we take, the equipment we have, and the conduct that we bring is how we do that. And then listening to our community, listening to what they have to say, whether it's a crime issue or a traffic concern or a neighborhood safety issue. Whatever's important to that community member is something that's important to us at the police department and me as the police chief. We have to be able to communicate and give feedback at any point that we're able to. The community relies on us to be transparent and accountable to them. After all, we're earning the right to police from them every day. We had better be accountable for it. We better be able to talk with them when things don't go right or when things do go right, and we can work together on whatever successes we had or opportunities for improvement exist. We have to be able to consider the impact of police operations in our community. And I truly believe that. In my own agency right now, we're working on a pretty elaborate initiative to reduce injury, accidents, and fatalities. And I know Lewisville is probably no different than us experiencing the same on our highways. Before we go out and conduct enforcement, and including this week, I've had our officers and our media group reach out through social media and our media channels to tell the public what we are about to come do, where we're about to come do it, and why we're there. So there is no hiding behind what our enforcement actions look like, but at the end of the day, the function is to reduce injury, accidents, and stop fatalities. And so it's not about traffic enforcement. It is about working with the community to solve a problem. And so considering the impact of our operations is important to me as well. And so all of those collectively go together to help us build that legitimacy and earn it from our community.
Our next question will be for Bill and then Christy. As the chief of police, you will be the police department's new public face. What specific actions will you take to build trust and develop relationships both within and external to the police department? Start with Bill.
This is the face you get, right? That's what you get. It seems like the same question over and over again, right? How are we building relationships with the community? And now I got to do it with my face. So I guess the reality is, and the topic lately in the last two questions have really been about transparency. We can't be afraid to address the public. We can't be afraid to deal with the media. We can't be afraid to do those things. If we're fighting for a greater cause, and this is what we're doing, and we know our job is honorable, all of us up here have done it for lots and lots of years. We wouldn't do it. It's too hard if it wasn't an honorable job, right? We committed to it. So as the face of Lewisville, realizing that there's a lot of stakeholders involved. That's why we're sitting up here now. You get to see the faces of who's the next police chief. It's one of these three. So this is what you get. And you get to see how that face is going to interact and how it's going to work. And we do have to be transparent. Lewisville has been very transparent. Go to City of Lewisville webpage. You can read all about us. You want to know all the good and the bad? It's all there. It's there. And if you call up and want more details, we'll probably give them to you because that's what we're doing. We own our mistakes. We aren't perfect. We're all human. But we take responsibility for those things. As a chief, you ultimately take responsibility for 265 employees related to that. That's a daunting task, and you get a different face when you think about that, I guess. But that's what Lewisville is. But man, what a great place. What a great thing. Even in the hard times, and you're talking to the difficult people that don't understand what we do and why we do it. When you've got to get on TV and tell them why a deadly force was used, that's not an easy thing to do. Know your job. Know what your officers are doing. Know that they were trained properly, doing it the right way, that you've always supported that. And own Own what you've done. Be honest, be humble, and you'll be okay. And we have a great department, we've got a great city, and that transparency is relatively easy right now for us. It just is. But there's been seasons in my 25 years it's not been as easy. And I think of poor Cheif Deaver, who his first 2 years as a chief, I think that's when he lost all his hair. And I mean, it was a really hard time, right? The police department was going through, all police departments, not just Lewisville, all police departments were going through a really difficult time. Stood strong. This is what we stood for. This is why we're doing it. This is what we do. We had riots in our city, and most of them had nothing to do with Lewisville residents, but there was a riot in our city, and our police chief took charge, and the police officers stepped up in very dangerous and difficult situation. And that's the face of Lewisville. But the face of Lewisville looks good right now. My vision is to keep it that way. Maybe not looking at this mug, but the reality is we have a good reputation for a reason, because our frontline officers, our records people, our jailers treat people professionally. We do our job. We aren't pushed by the media of what police work should be. We're an aggressive police department here. We arrest a lot of people here. There are so many officers that come and transfer into ours, and we go, why Lewisville? You got hundreds of agencies. Why are you transferring from us? You've been a cop. Why are you coming here? Because you guys do police work. You're supported by your community, and you're supported by your administration, and you're supported by your council members and your mayor. And they're right. And they can go do police work, because police work needs to happen. Police work is what keeps communities safe. Police work is a necessary thing. It's not a necessary evil. It's a necessity for us to be happy, to have a society that's functioning. And so that's the face of Lewisville. That's what it has been. That's what it needs to continue to be. And as we run into some rub, and we will with either certain communities or certain people, we have to head it face on. But we have a job to do. We have to do it together. And that's the face, being honest.
And Christy.
You know, as I was researching the Lewisville Police Department, as Bill mentioned, your website is very, very informative and transparent for those that have questions. You can readily find information on stats, reports that were 2 years ago. They're there. The access to information is readily available. What may be, or we could work on, is the connection part with one another. You know, this field can be very toxic and very trying, and it's important that we are forming these relationships, as you heard us over and over again talk about. And we do so by meeting with those in our community, meeting with our neighbors, walking the blocks, meeting the homeowners, going to city council meetings to see what are the issues and complaints that are coming in, and more importantly, what are the good things that are going on that we can push forward and continue with that momentum. I overheard that there was a protest or a riot that occurred in the city of Lewisville. I'm not sure of the circumstances, but I would do everything in my power with the men and women of the Lewisville Police Department to make sure we have these relationships firm and steady, because I'd much rather us have a walk or a march together hand in hand, supporting both, whether it's a protest of certain things or the counter protest. I'd much rather us be lockstep with the members of our community versus having to put up a front for a protest. So I will do whatever I can do, mend and mold relationships that need to be mended and molded, and make sure we are having marches and rallies versus protest. Thank you.
Next question will be for Brooke and then Bill. What steps will you take to ensure that the police department responds effectively to emergencies while minimizing harm?
It's a good question. All right, so the police department's primary function is responding to calls for service, and minimize harm is a very broad term of all the things that we could do, whether that's our own actions or just the way we interacted with a citizen. So for me, The most important thing to do as we understand how we respond to our community is to take a good stock of the data that's available to us that help us understand how we actually respond to our community. This police department, as we've already talked about, is very transparent with the data that it collects, and I prefer to use data to help inform decisions. Are we responding effectively? Are we responding quickly? And is there anything that is prohibiting us from doing it in a way that is satisfactory to the community? And that's the first part of that answer. The second part about making sure that officers are not committing any harm during the call that they may be engaged in is very simple, to ensure that we have hired and trained officers to respond as accordingly as possible. And that is backed with good policy and solid practice. And I've found, at least in my experience in policing, sometimes policy doesn't necessarily match the practice. And I am a big believer in ensuring that each one of those policies matches, and we are consistently reviewing our policies and our practices to best equip our officers with what it is they need to do their job, to avoid any issues that might arise as a result of what their response would bring. And then the last part is just that community interaction piece, how our officers are communicating with our public. That's another form of harm that the public can take on. We talked about the importance of building trust and legitimacy in our community, and that means that the expectations of the officers is every single call that they respond to is done in the utmost professional way. Well, these are human beings, right? And they suffer mental paper cuts as a part of this job over and over and over again. And the health and wellness of the staff is critically important. Taking care of ourselves, taking care of this department will pave the way for us to do no harm to our citizens out in the public with any of the interactions that we're sent to. So better understanding of our data, what it is that drives our operation, and how we choose to respond the way we do is one of the ways I intend to look at this particular picture. And then the next one is ensuring that our team is well equipped with good policy and practice supported by their leadership, and how we expect them to conduct themselves into the public. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, Brooke said it well in the aspect that harm comes in a lot of different levels. And so if you're talking about an emergency response to a call, are we talking, there's harm to a potential suspect or to a victim that you're trying to prevent more harm to the officer, how about harm to the community or a reputation of a police department? There's a lot of levels of harm here. I think you address it in a lot of different ways. I think excellent training and top-of-the-line training so officers know what legal rights we have to use force and not use force, when it's most appropriate to use it. The greatest or the only way to really supplement experience is through training. So realistic training, top-of-the-line training, giving the officers the proper equipment to be able to respond to these things, having multiple options for less lethal force, and having those tools and equipment to help do that. The training to deal with de-escalation and talking down and not having to go violent as much as you can to take control. There are so many different aspects there. But it also steps back to reputation and making sure that our policies and procedures allow these things, allowing them the opportunity to discern what need and to make some of those decisions. I believe in leadership at every level. The chief has a leadership role, but all the way down to the bottom line, I think we lead at every level. And we do that by teaching competency and helping each other out with all of those things. So very specific training dealing with that, very specific understanding of how the laws work, understanding our policies and procedures, empowering our officers to make those decisions. And they're the ones with all the information. They're the ones in the front lines. Their decisions matter. And I can have a lot of opinions, but when I'm a chief, I'm not the one on the 911 call on there. They have to make those decisions. So supporting that, training that, empowering them to do those things. And then Brooke brought up actually an excellent point when we talk about officer wellness, not just getting injured on a scene, but a lot of these scenes are very traumatic and very hard and they're very weighty. This goes not only to officers, certainly dispatchers have a weight that very few of us can understand when they're on a phone line listening to tragedy and they don't get closure at all. There are so many sides to that. Officer wellness, 21st century policing, pillar number 6 is wellness. I think we're starting to win this battle a little bit. I think we're starting to finally address it. We're getting past the stigmatisms of not asking for help and not reaching out. I think we're doing better there, but we have a long way to go. We just have a long way to go. So there's a lot of levels of harm that have to be addressed, and I think we have to address it in a lot of different ways, and we got to attack it full face.
Our next question will be for Christy, then Brooke. Drawing on your experience, discuss how you would continue the Lewisville Police Department's progress toward becoming an increasingly community-based problem-solving agency.
Yes, if I could, real quick, I'd like to go back to that last question. Just real quick. We talk about setting up our officers with this training and experience, which I absolutely emphatically agree, but I also want to mention it's imperative that we are training our first line supervisors to make these decisions and empowering them to make these decisions. Our first line supervisors have 80% control over our line level officers and civilian staff. If we will train them, mentor them, and give them the tools, and then allow them to make decisions, more likely than not, a majority of the potential liabilities would be minimized, mitigated, or altogether gone. So I just wanted to emphasize that we need to empower our sergeants and first line supervisors to make decisions, because a lot of times agencies put sergeants out there, they have little mentoring, little supervisory experience, and then when a pursuit happens, there's just no answer at all. It's imperative that we give them the training and the voice to say, continue that pursuit and here's why. Or, no, based on what you were sharing with me, I want you to go ahead and discontinue that pursuit. So we just need to empower them to make decisions, because I'm not going to be there. These pursuits tend to happen on nighttime. I'm not there. I'm entrusting my sergeants to make these decisions. James, would you mind repeating that next question?
I will. Drawing on your experience, discuss how you would continue the Lewisville Police Department's progress toward becoming an increasingly community-based problem-solving agency.
There's many ways that can be accomplished. I think one means is technology. It's a force multiplier. Technology is unbiased. There is technology out there to include license plate readers that can be placed strategically, not just on the outskirts of the city, but in hot spots internally, that can pick up on crimes. Most violent crimes, 70%, are done because of a vehicle was involved. That is a lot of cases that could potentially be solved by maximizing our technology aspects. Other community progress could be just making sure we are engaged with our community, that we are continuing on sharing transparent initiatives and activities. But certainly I would explore a lot of technology assets that can be force multipliers for the Lewisville Police Department.
Brooke?
Thank you. So I appreciate the question, and this kind of attributes back to me to a form of community-based policing. I think community-based policing is one of the easiest buzzwords that we use in law enforcement at solving problems, and it goes back decades. And you can find all kinds of different ways that model has been leveraged across time, from broken windows theory to the crime triangle to environmental design solutions. But really all that comes down to is just effective problem solving within a community. And when you look at these issues, whether they're crime, traffic safety issues, or even neighborhood issues that really have nothing to do with policing at all, the police department ends up being one of the central figures that gets to go out and help collaborate with that group and try to help solve the problem. And so as we leverage community-based policing here in the city of Lewisville, which is an ongoing and already in progress event, so to capitalize and enhance what we do, and then I think the easiest thing for us to do is to use the methods that are available to us and work best in this area. empowering our officers, our civilian staff to understand the information as well and provide that level of suggestion. On top of the data that we collect that helps inform our decisions about policing, the crime numbers we collect, the 911 calls we collect, we have a whole group of employees here that can see a whole lot about what's happening in this community. And so bringing that advice and that information forward along with what our community thinks through surveys, through open forums like we're doing right now, is a way to gather all of that information to help us shape the mission of law enforcement that we have from the community perspective. And then it's a matter of simply leveraging all of those relationships as often as possible. You know, as the police chief and the police department, we're actually just a piece of the overall city puzzle. There is a whole slew of city services that are available, and in some cases probably more equipped to deal with a particular issue. And so as the chief of police, it's imperative to work not just within the organization and with the community, but with every city department here as we collaboratively work on issues that may not necessarily be a parks problem, but might be a library issue or could be a fire department issue, and working together to share those resources. And so simply understanding the data, understanding the information that's brought to us, and working collectively with the staff providing us that information, using the methods that are already available to us on how to solve these problems, and then evaluating our success is how I intend to manage community-based policing and keep us moving forward as a problem-solving agency for the city of Lewisville.
This question will be for Bill and then Christy. Discuss how social media can be of benefit to a police department and how you have used social media in your policing experience.
Well, social media is the way right now, right? That's how we're reaching so many other generations that we weren't able. And even the older generations use Facebook now. I guess that's old, as crazy as that sounds. And it's some of the other Instagrams and all the other ones the youngers are using. That's how we get out there. That's how we show what the face of Lewisville is. Recently, we've started to Catch of the Week. We love doing it because we show about the bad guys that we catch, and we push it out every week, and we say what cool things some officers did, and they found a Catch of the Week, and they're great stories, and it's there, and we've had a lot of response to that. The officers love it. The community loves it because they love that we're catching bad guys, right? There's a lot of police shows for a reason, and that's a little bit of our police show. So social media, I think we can expand on this. Staffing never allows us to do as much as we would like, but we could be better at pushing out more social media, more contact. Our most recent hiring and recruiting has had a huge success with a few officers that have stepped in and joined our recruiting thing, and a lot of that success has come through social media and actively searching out for police officers in great departments that tell them how great our department is. And I get to sit on all these hiring boards, and we ask them, how did you hear about us? And it's amazing to see how many said, Officer John Michael reached out to me, and he answered all my questions, and he told me how great it was there. And that's an amazing thing. We have a great recruiting program, and we've got a very active recruiter, and we have other people that assist him. And what a great thing, right? And so social media is there. We can't ignore it. It will chew us up and spit us out if we pretend it doesn't exist. So that's another way we can really aggressively, meaning proactively, I guess, address what we're dealing with. And if we have real crime happening in Lewisville, a real problem, we can address it social media, get it out there. Hey, this is what we're doing. We're currently working. Lewisville's an interesting thing right now. Our violent crime has dropped, but ironically, our homicide rate has skyrocketed, and it's the same number, but it's different. So we've had the last 2 years a very high homicide count, but yet those are also included in the violent crime, and they've dropped. So going out, and now we've built a program to actively deal with this, and it's already started, and we're doing some hotspot, enforcement, dealing with data, and all the stuff that we're gathering to find where these hotspots are, trying to get guns off the street, trying to get bad guys in jail. That's what we're trying to do. And part of that is dealing with social media, letting people know, hey, this is what we're doing. When you see all these flashing lights, this is what's going on. We're trying to, and keeping the public informed. So social media is very powerful, and we could be better at it. And we need to be better at it. We need to stay active with it. And that's one thing I think I can improve as a chief, is just really dig a little bit deeper into that. Social media is not my thing. I don't pretend to be a social media guy. I'm not great at it. But I understand the little bit I deal with it. But I watch some of the success we've had, and we continue to have, and it can continue to grow as it being a very positive thing. We're doing it pretty well. Like I said, Catch of the Week is one of the greatest things we've done recently. That we constantly put on there proactively from the police department.
And Christy.
Social media, hands down, is powerful. It is a tool that we would absolutely use and continue to use in all different facets. As Bill mentioned, it's an excellent recruiting tool. We use that to recruit new officers, not only for basics, but lateral. And that was also for our communications, detentions, records. It's a great opportunity to push for openings and sharing the benefits of what we offer. But it's also a tool that we can push the narrative out and be the first ones to indicate what's going on in our city, rather than somebody reporting it from their Twitter account. I was a big advocate of social media. I had a Twitter account. All of the assistant chiefs, the chief had their individual Twitter accounts. We had a Maine Police Department Twitter account, as well as Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and we'd absolutely utilize those. It's imperative that we form the relationships with our media partners. They're our friends, believe it or not, and it's great that we can form these relationships ahead of time, and when there is a critical incident, not only are we able to put that public release statement out immediately, but they can pick up on our own tweets, or now known as X, and push that out. And it seems that there's a lot more value behind when the agency is able to push out information and the news media is using it. So definitely would use that as a tool and an asset, and I would grow that because it is extremely powerful getting the message out to our community.
We are going to shift now to some of our audience-provided questions, so we have time to get some of those in before we close for the evening. We'll maintain the same rotation. So this next question will be for Brooke and then Bill. What progressive measures will be taken or implemented to decrease gang violence within the city of Lewisville? And what is your stance on criminal street gangs, drug houses, and other violent crimes?
Well, thank you for that question. I had a chance to speak to several members of this unit just out in the hallway here, and I know that this is an important topic to you, and I share your concerns. Whatever the issue is, gang violence, street violence, narcotic issues, these are all issues that begat larger crimes. And Chief already mentioned just a minute ago about the paradox of our violent crime numbers being down, but our homicides being up. In Arlington, we're experiencing the exact same thing. We're experiencing a downturn in our overall violent crime, but an upturn in our homicide rate as compared normally to where we should be. And what we're finding is that a lot of these offenses that are surrounding our homicides are based in risky behavior, if you will, a coined term of being involved in narcotic or illicit activity that might have led to that homicide. It certainly doesn't earn anybody the right to be involved in a homicide, but I truly believe that managing the street crime level offenses, managing those low level offenses, I say low level, but those misdemeanor style offenses that root those drug problems or root those firearm offenses lead to larger crimes. So I'm supportive of that type of measure to control violent crime as an overall comprehensive picture of what the Lewisville Police Department is doing. Working with gangs, whether it be through intelligence or through enforcement, is a critical aspect of how we would choose to respond to better understand what's happening in our community and who the key players are and who we need to focus upon. So I believe in that type of activity, but I believe in it also from the data perspective because it will help inform us of where to go next. It's not necessarily person specific, it could be firearm specific or incident location specific. And I think all of those deserve an opportunity to help us understand what the trends of the crimes are. So yes, I do believe that is a valuable tool to us here at the Lewisville Police Department, and I would be supportive of using it in an effort to offset gun violence and ultimate murder or larger violent crimes that it could begat. Thank you.
And Bill.
Yes, I agree completely that I guess my take on that is we need to aggressively enforce against gang violence and gang criminal activity, and we need to do everything we can to hit it and hit it hard. And that starts with as simple as relationships. We had a recent town community with the Chin community, a town hall meeting, and with the pastors actually of the Chin group requested that we get together because they're having a hard time staying connected with, or they're finding out way too late about kids in their community because the parents are finding out late. And so we did an educational thing, and I say we, really our gang officer did an incredible job of standing up and talking about these are drugs, these are gang signs, these are things, and he showed so they can identify quicker. And what's kind of disturbing, and I think maybe we know this, but it's kind of hard to hear the facts, kids are joining gangs at younger and younger ages. So how we address that is everything from SROs and building relationships with younger kids in middle schools, because when they're in high school in gangs, they're almost impossible for our units to pull them out. They're fully involved. So we need to address it that way. We need to get involved and build relationships with them. We're also involved with the community. We're having the Boys and Girls Club joining us now and serve Lewisville, the new building. And it would be great to start building an officer relationship program where we maybe have officer athletics tied in with these Boys and Girls Clubs so these kids have somewhere else to go. You come from a Chin community, and this is probably fair with a lot of the Indian community, the Hispanic community. They may not have a place to go, and they move into a place and they don't understand the culture, and they're being picked on, they're being bullied in school, and the only protection is reaching out to this gang or that gang to protect them from the gang that's bullying them, and we've got to give them more options. That said, we are fully engaged in hotspot enforcing right now, and we're targeting gangs, and we have a lot of information and data related to who those gang members are. We have relationships with them. It was interesting, one of the questions came to the Chin community, how do we know if our child's involved in a gang? And the gang officer gave the greatest answer ever. If I haven't talked to you, they're probably not part of a gang. That's incredible, but the reality is our gang officers and our street crimes who tie into really the same unit, they're engaged in this criminal activity, and they're proactively engaged. They're not just dealing with the suspect who might be a juvenile, they're dealing with their families and their communities and trying to get them out. And I think that's where we enforce it, all the way up to SWAT knocking down the door if it's down to that far. We've done a lot of them. We've put gang guys in jail and taken all their weapons if it gets that far, but we aggressively attack that stuff because it tends to fester and it tends to grow if you don't head it head on. You'd have to really address it. So I would aggressively attack those things. I think we are now, and I would continue to do that.
Yes, Christy wanted to step in.
Yeah, I agree with Bill and the statement of how important it is to form these relationships, especially with our youth. Let me be very clear, it's not to be a cliche, but gangs that are residing in the city of Lewisville will not be welcome under my tenure, plain and simple. To those that are adults that are indoctrinating our youth to believe that it is right to commit crimes and do drugs and hurt and offend others, we'll be responsibly aggressive at making sure that those adults are held accountable and that they're given resources to start thinking differently, because our boys and girls, we're going to do everything we can to protect them.
Okay. Our next question is for Christy and then Brooke. As chief, what would be your philosophy and approach to continuous training for your officers? And are there any specific areas of training that you would focus on?
I think we're hearing it more and more, just globally, but also more centralized here in North Texas, is de-escalation. We've got a lot of tools and tactics that our police officers and civilian staffs have been afforded. And a lot of the new tools and technology that is coming out, specifically with Exxon, is meant to get officers in the mindset of de-escalating, using our verbal judo to calm the situation as opposed to having to use force. But if so, what force is dictated and can we minimize or mitigate the level of force. So certainly I think de-escalation, y'all have already, well in advance, have taken implicit bias training. I know that y'all took that, I believe, in 2019 and 2020. But those are good courses to have a constant reminder. And so I would absolutely focus on the two Ds in regards to training. But that's what I would focus on.
And Brooke.
Well, thank you for the question. So I served as the training commander for the police department where I am now, and had the opportunity to manage our incumbent training, and it is a daunting task to ensure that we are in compliance with what the state requests us to do. And every other year when TCOL issues a new mandate cycle for mandatory training, it's a big ask. And this year is no example of difference with the alert training that's been published for all of our school-based locations. It can get interrupted a lot. So for me, continuous training is vitally important, and it's my understanding that the Lewisville Police Department practices this as a regular conduct of business, and I intend to keep it that way. Training is one of the ways that we become defendable to changes and things that we were not expecting, even things that may not have been statutorily required. I think leveraging some additional ways to manage the statutory training, moving to an online system for statutory and mandatory training, the easy 2 and 4 hour classes gives us more time in the classroom to work on things that are going to be imperative to our officers, tactics training or technology training. I share Christy's opinion about technology as being a very important tool. What I've found with technology is sometimes we don't even understand how to work it and how it can best serve us in the police department. You'll have intelligence-based detectives that are frustrated because the information coming in from the device or the technology in the field is not being implemented correctly. That training is critical to me to help us do our job better as police officers. But also something that I've noticed a vacancy in, at least in my own agency, is training for our civilian and professional staff. Frequently get overlooked for different types of training that might be available to them. Sure, does every citizen or does every civilian staff need to go through tactics training? I don't know. We might be able to put them through to give a better understanding of what we're doing, to give them a better understanding of how they're conducting their job with us. And leveraging leadership opportunities for our police department, be that professional or sworn, is critically important as well. There's a lot of training opportunities that can help us develop our own staff and give people an opportunity to find another job in the police department that better suits them, or take that promotional test because they know they've been trained well for it. And that type of training is things that I'm interested in focusing upon, and that includes for all of the professional staff that work here as well. Thank you.
And Bill is asked to weigh in on this one.
Yeah, this is where my heart is training. I've been here 25 years, but I've trained for 23 of those 25 years. I've been an active instructor. I've built programs. That's where my heart is. It's all about training. Training is the only substitute for experience. There's nothing else that gets close to experience. And if you have experience with good training, then it builds better experiences. That's where my heart is. Lewisville has always been above and beyond. It's been above and beyond what anything's been asked by Texas. We did implicit bias. Before they approved it, we had to do it a second time because they took ours. They didn't give us the number. They wouldn't even give us the approval for it, even though they took our class and used it. So we've always been very active in training, and I love our training department. So that's truly where my heart is, and most of you know that in here because you've spent a lot of time with me. And in training, that's where we learn and where we grow. We strive for excellence. It's coming through training. Any great organization, any great group, if you're good, you're a good trainer, you're a good learner. I believe in learning. I think learning has to be something that has to go citywide, but certainly police department-wide. We're learning every day. What I really focus on, I'd focus on leadership. I think we train the fundamentals quite well. I think we certainly train above and beyond what TCOL requires of us, and we always have extra classes and extra things, but I think where we could be better is training leaders at every level, learning how to lead, learning how to do that, learning how to handle a critical incident. That's where some gaps are. You don't have a lot of critical incident training when it comes to TCOL. They don't even mandate it in supervisor classes or anything. There are still gaps in all of that. And so training, I think, is the key. There's a reason Lewisville doesn't make the news on horrible things that happen, because officers are trained incredibly well. And I think that is the key to keep us out of the news for the negative things, is training, and training effectively. Training is an animal that is growing. TCO requires more every year. It's maddening to control. It's hard, and not all of it even makes sense, right? I mean, it's very difficult and doesn't always make sense. But I love that our department has always, and our city has always supported that training is important, it's vital. And I would push that we expand training, we do it better, we have a dedicated unit. I would even push to expand our training building to allow us more space to do it, because we not only train Lewisville, we train all the area all the time. And those training is the key to all our success.
Our next question is for Brooke and then Bill. When making decisions for promotion or lateral movement, how do you balance tenure with skills and abilities? Brooke.
It's a good question. You know, every time that we look at moving somebody in an organization, whether we're moving them to another job or we're promoting them, the comprehensive picture has to be evaluated. You have to be able to consider every person's history, their current resume, and what it is they're trying to do in that career. And so that relies on the importance of the supervision and leadership in this police department being engaged and plugged in with the members of this police department. I intend and expect that anybody that wants to promote and gain the opportunity of becoming a formal leader in the organization get the chance to do so. It is my expectation that if somebody wants to go and learn how to be a detective, or go join the SWAT team, or work in the traffic unit, or move from records to property, they should be able to do so. And so I believe that tenure that an employee has plays a role in allowing or deciding for them to take on a new challenge and a new job. And so I intend to support that. I think that from a comprehensive picture of the chief, to be able to ask critically of the team that is hiring this person, or the team that is laterally transferring this person, or even the promotional group, how do we know what the history of this person is? What opportunities did we take to seek out those that might be able to fill this role and are interested in doing this job? How did we recruit for this position before we've arrived at making this selection? And I think that helps broaden our own depth of experience and expertise for our entire workforce. So for me, the tenure matters. For me, the performance matters. And I will candidly tell you, I've met some great leaders that were very new at their job. They were greater leaders than they were workers. And I've met some horrible leaders that have been around forever and didn't do any of that good. And so there really isn't a metric that will tell you one way or the other how this person is going to perform. So that comes down to the leadership and all of us understanding the workforce that works for us. Nobody should ever be shocked at somebody's performance from their boss. They should always have that relationship to understand it. So I do believe in the tenure, and I do believe in the performance as things that help justify how we laterally move and promote people within the organization.
And Bill.
That's a tricky thing for all leaders to balance, seniority and time versus capability. But ultimately, competence and ability should trump all of it, but it needs to be fair and equitable, and that can be very dangerous on how we do that, because it turns into a Big Brother program, or it's my buddy, and that gets us into some racial problems and some other stuff that we have set up. So I think seniority does play a role, but I think it's very small. I think unfortunately, some people have 20 years experience, and some people have 1 year of experience 20 times, right? So the number doesn't always add up properly. So I think having a formal outlined process for lateral transfers like we currently do, it could be tweaked, but the reality is I think it's really good what we currently do. We currently have a test. It's a written test on any lateral transfer, and they have to do that, and it doesn't matter at that point, right? And that's approved all the way up, so everybody can look at it to make sure doesn't show any kind of bias. And then we have an interview process, and even those questions are set up that they're approved to make sure they're not showing any bias there, and that's built by those leaders that are filling. So if you're trying to fill a detective, the captain's in charge, who's over that unit, to build that test and to build those interview questions. He can use the help of whatever he needs, but those are the resources. And then part of that process is work history, and they're all scored. They all have a score value to them, and so seniority and experience does help, but it certainly is not the end all. And I think we have to be very careful on those lateral transfers to find the qualified people and the most capable people. And we have to be careful because sometimes we have our own personal agendas or even personal feelings. We've got to be very careful with that. And so I think we vet that through a board, through tests, through interviews, and we've picked the most qualified person.
Okay, we're going to try and squeeze in 2 more questions, 3 if we're quick. This one is for Christy and then Brooke. As the chief, you will have final approval on certain decisions made by your staff. Letting your administrators make their decisions is important, but how would you handle someone in your administration making a decision that you know would negatively affect internal legitimacy?
I'm a big believer in the feedback of my executive staff. I do that now as a director at the North Central Texas Council of Governments. We've had to make a couple of recent hires, and I absolutely wish to receive their feedback. And sometimes their feedback is absolutely contradictory to what I think or believe. And we talk about it, we discuss it, we work through it. And ultimately, though, the decision rests on me because the decisions and outcomes fall at my footsteps. And if I know based on the decision that he or she is making is not right or appropriate for the internal mechanisms of our police department, I'm going to have the courage to communicate with him or her, and most importantly, tell him or her why. I think that's important, to explain the why as to the negative effect that could occur if we go based on this decision. And most of the time when you explain the why to your people, they get it. There's no question. It's when you leave it open-ended and you don't tell him or her why. So it's very important to explain the why, and ultimately the decision is mine, and those that I have part of my executive team would understand that.
Brooke?
Thank you for the question. I think that's a really important question because I believe very much so in the empowerment of decision makers throughout the organization, from the officers all the way up to the chief. I believe everybody that has the job of making an important decision about somebody should be able to do so. Now, obviously, without having the policy committed to memory to know exactly what decisions belong just to the chief and exactly what decisions belong to the rest of the chain of command, I'll take a little bit of liberty with my answer to say that I think when you run into an issue where there's going to be damaged legitimacy for the police department, action has to be taken. But I'm also a fan of not emasculating anybody. I'm a big believer, as you develop leaders and as you develop the staff that is working through these issues, I'm a big believer in trying to allow someone to arrive at their own decision by asking questions and having them seek some alternative solutions to problems that might have been presented. It is possible that organically that person will arrive at that decision on their own, and they might chalk it up as a good learning experience to take with them in the future as they make these decisions. But ultimately, if the policy directs or if the legitimacy is going to be harmed, it's on me to take action, and that's something that I will do. I certainly don't know what the example might be where this could be the case, but there are some things that are going to direct policy decisions by the chief, and there are some other things that I think are just going to require the horsepower of the chief to weigh in on and give consideration to. And so you can expect that from me. I expect to challenge you to lead, not to lead for you. And maybe that comes at harm to myself right now, but the expectation is that you grow yourself where you're at, because I'm only here for the next 10 or so years. There's got to be people behind me able to take that job on, and I recognize that from where I sit now. And so I would be able to set those alternatives, have that conversation, and seek those questions to see if we can come to a mutual understanding before the decision's made. But ultimately, if it's something that's going to damage the integrity of the police department, I'm going to take action, and I'm going to do it decisively. But then I will make sure that there is a clear communication and feedback with the person that resulted from that, so that they have an understanding of why it was I did what I did. So, thank you.
Our next question is for Bill and then Christy. This question is submitted from a member of the Lewisville Citizen Police Academy Alumni Association, who asks, how do you see the association supporting the police department?
We love our association. Can't believe how hard they work. They are engaged and involved in almost everything we do, and they would be engaged more probably if we opened up the doors to even more things. They're just an incredible resource for us. You talk about great people who volunteer their time and their energies and their efforts constantly. There's hardly any public event that the police department does, I don't know of any maybe, that they're not engaged with in somehow or in some way or another. Can they do more? Oh my gosh, I don't know. Can you guys do more? You guys are doing so much. I mean, my goodness, you guys are so engaged in everything we do. And I mean, these guys bring food, I say once a month, that's cutting them short. They do a huge thing once a month for the patrol guys who work, and they really specifically lean towards the night shift that doesn't get all the day drive-bys where people donate. They spend so much time and energy in every function in every fashion. So I don't know, if you had ideas and you wanted to get into more, come talk to me. I think you guys do so much. I have no interest in cutting you out of any part of it. Of what we're currently doing, and most of you I know quite well, and my gosh, between kid identification, between food bringing, between just kind of representing Lewisville and everything that we do, you guys are really the face of that, and it's so appreciative. And you keep growing as we keep our annual Citizens Academy, and you guys continue to grow and you continue to empower us. Here's the biggest thing. Of all things you guys do, Ashton's room blows me away. And I didn't understand it when it started. I didn't get it. I came back into patrol after training, and I watched at 2 a.m, and you guys volunteer to watch our kids, these babies. That really puts patrol in a bind. And you guys are never there in less than 20 minutes. And when I tell other people about this, that blows their mind. That is an incredible asset, and out of the many, many things you do, it's those times when we're in a crunch. Who steps up? It's the alumni, and you guys are incredible. So what you guys have done and continue to do, the hours you spend, even calling for warrants and the crazy stuff. I can't believe all the stuff you guys do. So if you got some cool ideas, maybe you could do a chief job or something, because you guys do enough stuff, right? I couldn't be more impressed with what you do and how you do it, and I 100% support you guys as being a part of it.
And Christy.
I just echo Bill's statement. I think the better question is, what could the police department do for you? Where I worked, the Alumni Association was there day in and day out. They too provided us with food, bottled water for the hot months. They were out at Joe Pool Lake when we were working the 4th of July, New Year's. They were always there for us. Miss Mary was a token. She was always a visible fixture for us, a symbol of hope and that things are not so bad as it looks. So the question is what can the police department do for you? And from what I've heard, you guys are invaluable. Thank you for what you do and continue to do.
Okay. With that, we're going to give each of the candidates 2 minutes for a brief closing statement before we wrap up the evening. And going alphabetically, we'll start with Christy.
I just want to thank everybody that came. This is overwhelming to see the amount of men and women, specifically from the Lewisville Police Department, that decided to come and partake and invest in this. It speaks volumes of the characters that are within the Lewisville Police Department. I'd be honored to be your chief of police. My husband and I understand the sacrifice that it takes to lead an organization. We're on board. We're willing to come and be residents of the city of Lewisville, because I think it's important for us to build relationships that are not just internal but also external with our stakeholders. I'm very impressed of the many things that have been moving in the positive direction for Lewisville Police Department, the support from city management, the mayor's office, the community. Anybody would be blessed to be in this position. So whether that's me or my other two counterparts here today, the Lewisville Police Department is in good hands because it has been sustained for the last several years, and I look forward to hopefully being your next police chief.
Brooke?
Thank you. I also want to thank you for being here. It all started with Linda. She was the first person to greet me coming off the stairs, and it hasn't stopped then. And that has been one of the most impressive testaments to what this community and what this police department believes in its leadership, and it means a lot. So I'm appreciative that you have taken time to come here to learn about us and to hear from us. We've talked a lot about of different topics tonight, and I want to go back to some of the things that I originally opened with. You know, as a police chief, we could all talk about different programs and initiatives and policies and practices, but I think it all comes down to the leadership style and the leadership fit for the organization, for the city, and for the chief as well. And for me, that style comes down to two key elements: people and relationships. I believe in that trust. I believe in earning that trust from you. I believe in forming those ongoing relationships. Whether or not I get to work here, I'm confident I'm going to know Linda from here on out. And then I also believe in the importance of the people of this community and of this police department. And I know that together, this department is headed in the right direction. I echo Christy's comments about the future looks good for the city of Lewisville. I'm hopeful to be a part of it. I'm excited and humbled to be in this position, to even be here talking with you about it. I congratulate these other fine police leaders, and I look forward to what the next few days brings. So thank you again for your time and your attention and your questions. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke and Bill.
First, I need to apologize. They all talked about their families, and my bio has a lot on there, and most of you know my family, but I didn't really, in my introduction, talk about them. My wife's here of 30 years. We've been married this year, and I have 4 kids, and they're all married. I got 2 grandkids, and my world revolves around them, and family is maybe the most important thing to me in my world. And that's why I love Lewisville. Lewisville's family. I've spent more time probably here than at home, as crazy as that sounds, and I've built a lot of great relationships here with the community and with the many employees here, and certainly of our police department. And so I'm honored to be part of that. I'm grateful to hear from Brooke from Arlington tell you that Lewisville has a great reputation, or from Christy who comes from Grand Prairie and Cog, right, and talks about the great reputation Lewisville has. I'm honored to be part of that for 25 years, and I'm not responsible for all of it, but maybe a little nick here and a little nick there of helping build this community and helping build this department. So it's an honor to sit here with them and be part of that. Here's the unique thing is I would love to be your chief, but I'm also talking to my 2 future bosses potentially, so they don't have that, but I have that, and so that's kind of an interesting thing that I get to sit there and go like, I wouldn't be mean to them, and they're way too good at what they do up here, and so but it is an interesting environment to sit here. That said, Lewisville's a great place. I know that. I took unlike Brooke, who said he knew he wanted to be a chief, I wasn't sure that's what I wanted, and I worked most of my career, just put my head down and go to work. That's just what I do, and I love doing what I do, and I've loved it my whole career. And I've kind of promoted my way up through, what a blessing that's been in my life, but I took a while to decide, and I really talked to a lot of people, some of you in here, and I sat and talked. I certainly consulted with my wife. Can I bring something more? This is bigger than me. This is a heavy thing, and I love what we have, and I feel a duty and a responsibility to continue that. So my core values: duty, discipline, and honor. That's what I have lived by for many, many years. And I felt a duty to try to continue what we're doing because I love it, and I think what we have is great. So I'm grateful for this time. It's been it's daunting to sit up here and take random questions, but it's been enjoyable, and I appreciate all of you. So thank you.
So please show some appreciation for all 3 of our finalists. Other than the free bottled water, this was a hard evening probably for all 3 of them. Well done. Thank you for your time. I want to express appreciation for our ASL interpreters, for our online Spanish translators, for our wonderful audiovisual staff and the work they have done, and for all of you for being here. You put out a lot of time to come and be a part of your community, and especially for the police department staff who are present, not just for being here, but for the important work you do every day. I live in Lewisville, and I feel better knowing you're out there. I really appreciate your work, as I know my fellow residents do. So thank you all for being here this evening. I suspect the 3 of them are not going to dash for the door if you catch them, but it's been a long evening. So thank you for your time, and be safe going home.